السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وآله وصحبه وسلم. There are a number of questions that I've received and I've seen as a member of the Fiqh Council of North America as well as the European Council for Fatwa related to the current events of the Covid-19 and questions related to a number of issues. And I thought it would be appropriate to answer some of these questions quickly in those minutes in order to have some sort of an account for the fiqh, let's say, the jurisprudence related to that topic. Number of questions related to the Jum'ah prayers and the masajid and so on. And there's so many fatwas out there. But basically the point of closing the masjid if needed, closing the Jum'ah if needed, is actually to protect people's lives, which is a higher purpose than the prayer in collective. Not the prayer themselves. The prayers themselves are part of our deen, part of Islam, the pillars of Islam. It's much higher. But we're talking about the collective prayer, especially in the masjid, where there are possibilities of infection and so on. And basically, inshallah, this is a temporary measure for the masjids that had to close. And inshallah, eventually they will be reopened. This is not new in our history, and it's not new in our fiqh or our jurisprudence. It's something that makes sense, and Islam has to protect people's lives and has to be in that responsible position for protecting people's lives. There is no need to argue about that because it's just a temporary measure. Nobody is calling for the closing of the masjids. And therefore, the Jum'ah could be prayed whether at home or in a workplace for those workplaces that are still open, or a number of friends and so forth. The minimum, in my view, is 2 people that could make a Jama'ah. Most opinions say the minimum would be 3 people that could make a Jama'ah, could make a Jum'ah. I don't differentiate between homes and other places. Other scholars do, because I don't think there's a difference between praying Jum'ah at home or praying Jum'ah under a tree, like some of the companions did at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and so forth. Now, basically, can we pray Jum'ah through the internet or through a radio station or something? And that would not be the Jum'ah that we know unless there is a connectivity, some sort of a connectivity. So if there are more than one floor and there is a camera or whatever, or a microphone, and there is an ability of a connection between the different lines, then it's correct. But the Jum'ah in Islam is not where some people pray in one part of the city and others pray in another part of the city, and so forth. These are even different timings and different positions of the sun and so forth. And the point of the Jum'ah is the collection of the people from a vicinity and their connectivity in order for them to pray. So it's better not to do that and to pray in each house or in each workplace as possible. And now those who pray where they put arm's lengths literally between themselves and make a Jama'ah, that's also a Jama'ah that is not the Jama'ah that we know. If there is a problem with infection and so forth, then we could pray individually, but not claim for this to be a line while each of us is actually in a different side of the mosque. These are not the lines that are part of the Islamic ibadah. And if we cannot do the Islamic ibadah, the general rule is that we do as much as we can, and we watch the possibilities and so forth, given the priorities that we know, the protection of life and so forth, that Islam is so keen about. Now, can I pray for non-Muslims to be cured? Of course, actually, Islam is a good way of life, not just for Muslims. Islam is a way of life where you love the good for everybody, except for those who are oppressors or those who are murderers or something. But into the general sense, whether the person is a Muslim or non-Muslim, a believer or non-believer, you should be able to pray for them, pray for their mercy, and pray for their health and so forth, and ask Allah to guide them and ask all the good for them. It's not really, I mean, sometimes we put false lines between what we can do for Muslims and non-Muslims. So with Muslims, I am fair and I am honest and I can pray for them and I'm nice to them. And with non-Muslims, I'm not. And actually, this is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had ordered us against in the Quran. When He mentioned that some people from the previous peoples, they said that we are only going to be fair for our people, and we are not going to do usury only for our people, and we are not going to kill only our people, etc. And several places in the Quran for that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is believing in part of the book and not believing in another part, because the whole book is saying that you should be good to everybody. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the da'wah, the calling for Allah, and da'wah to ila al-khair, also calling for the good, not just calling for Islam, calling for any good, any kind of good. Another one of those questions is whether the vaccine would have any haram material. And actually, the haram material here, whether you are talking about alcohol or something that's taken from a pig, is not haram to put in a vaccine or put on your skin or use for cleansing or disinfection. What is haram here is to drink that. Why is it haram to drink something with alcohol or anything that is a kind of a drug or anything that is an intoxicant? It's because of your mind, the impact on the mind. You put alcohol on your skin and it doesn't affect your mind. Or you put something from a pork in a needle or in something that you put in a vaccine, and this is not eating it. Eating is a different story. So no, there are no issues on that. Now, if I infect somebody, a question is saying, and that person died, am I responsible for that? Well, you are responsible if the infection is because of negligence. If it is something that you could have avoided, but you neglected your duties to avoid that, then you are responsible for that. Just ask Allah to, repentance and so forth. But we are supposed to be careful so we are not harming people with that. Is it allowed in Islam to go out of the house? Yes, of course it is. I mean, the issue here is social distancing. So when you are out, you keep a distance so we avoid infection and so on. It's not about going out per se. And every government has said that. Is it forbidden to handshake or to hug my brothers? And yes, of course, because this is a matter. It's not forbidden as in something that is haram, not allowed in Islam, but we are doing that for the sake of protection, for the sake of a consequence that we're trying to avoid. Now regarding the janaza for those who die from this. In Islam, we are not allowed to burn bodies because the body in Islam, even if it's infected, has a sanctity. And in Islam, what we can do is basically keep the body isolated totally in an isolated bag and bury that body. If it is dangerous to wash it, then we can avoid that. If we can pour the water from a distance, then we can do that. If we can do tayammum, or otherwise, if the authorities, as the question is saying here, is forbidding dealing with the body, and we are supposed to bury it or burn it, then we just bury it. We're not allowed to burn bodies in Islam. Now, about how can we fast with the corona and we're always ordered to drink water and so on? I don't know. I haven't heard anything from a doctor really who says that your fasting will have a negative impact on you. You refer to your doctor if you have issues. If your fasting is going to make you too weak, and it's a time for working on people's immunities and so on, it's a special case. But in the average case, not eating or drinking for the day is not going to impact your immunity. You can use disinfectants, you can use other things. We don't have to always like drink water and so on. At this time of financial difficulty in our masajid and so on, how can we deal with that? A number of measures that could be taken. Number one is to give the zakah before Ramadan, to make sure for those who are listening to this that you give your zakah and give your sadaqat to our masajid and to our Islamic organizations even before Ramadan, because it is a time of crisis. Islamic organizations depend on fundraising to a great deal. They are usually charities that are not funded by governments or businesses or whatever, and they are funded by the people. And when the mosque is closed, it does have an impact on the Islamic organizations. So basically, it's an encouragement to take every measure possible for the Islamic organizations to be able to continue to function. And if the government has a plan to help NGOs or charities, as we've heard in Europe and some of the governments, then we should be able to take that and allow ourselves to benefit from the general economic system that is trying to help charities and trying to help NGOs to survive. We're asking about, finally, if you are in a city and there is a plague, then do not go out of the city and so on. The Prophet ﷺ said these things not as a matter of ibadah. He said them as a matter of policy. So basically, the application of that hadith regarding the plague today is to go to the government website or the city's website and look at the policy, whatever the policy is. And whatever that policy is the application of the hadith. Because the Prophet ﷺ was not telling us about something that we do out of ibadah. This is not an act of worship. He was taking the best precaution for the plague of his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by saying that there is a lot of wisdom in this, that you do not enter a city that has the plague, and if you're in the city, you don't go out. But today, especially with this virus, there are a number of other precautions that are taken, and travel could be allowed under certain conditions and so forth. If you follow these conditions and precautions, then you should be all right, inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that these times of trial pass quickly, and we are only rewarded with the reward of being patient and being persevere at this time of trial. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala safety for all. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.